Sure, you're more aware of ATGM units, but we barely reach the halfway point, because tanks like yourself are still one of the biggest threats to you, especially if you don't understand what you're up against. Welcome to another part of Threats to Armor. Part 3. Against main battle tanks, or in other words... Main battle tanks are the kings of the battlefield, heavily armed, armored, and built to take a beating. With a wide selection of armored tanks with different loadouts, how you kit out your MBT will directly dictate the outcome of the fights it runs into. But why does it matter, you ask? Well, let me show you with an example. T90 versus an M1A1HC, both tanks going head to head from the front and using only AP shells. In order to 4-shot a HE with 17 HP, a minimum of 4.25 damage is required from the T90. A stock T90 practically has to reach kisting distance of 110 meters just to get enough penetration and damage to 4-shot a HE. But once you upgrade to the T90A with an improved gun penetration, suddenly that 4-shot kill range jumps to a whopping 740 meters and it can even 3-shot at 52 meters. To 4-shot a T90 with 16 HP, 4 damage or more will suffice from the HC. The HE can reach up to 1121 meters to 4-shot the outdated T90, or even drop to 651 meters and finish the job in 3 shots. But against the upgraded T90A with 17 HP, that 4-shot damage changes to 4.5. With more HP and tougher armor, the HE is required to close the gap down to 671 meters to reliably 4-shot the T90A. See the difference? Just one upgrade completely shifts the engagement profile. But let's be real, no one's gonna be driving a stock HC and engagements won't be at close-up all the time. You're more than likely to run into something much tougher, and there's plenty of other tanks in the mix. Let's start with the US, with the Abrams tanks. With the M1AP, FEP and HE being rock-solid tanks. Excellent gun penetration, great armor. But here's the catch. Even with 450 side hit protection upgrades, Russian MBTs can still delete you with heat shells in just 3 shots. Ouch. M1A2 line is where things gets good. Each variant boosting gun penetrations, with the SEP V3 topping the charts at a massive 525 pen, the highest in the entire game. Also, most of these Bs can be upgraded to 19 HP and have some of the best all-round protection in the game. SEP variants will dominate most 1v1 fights, able to reach up to 1400 range. They will outrange most MBTs, with the exceptions being the T90Ms and the T14s. Do take note, in order to retain a higher HP and side protection, they are kept at 60 km on the roads and just 45 off-road, making them the slowest MBTs in the game. M60s, low frontal protections, cheap, outdated, and honestly, don't expect this tank to win against any other MBTs. Even the cheapest Russian T72s will bully it. Keep an eye out if the enemy starts to use them as swamps. The M8. As a light tank, the AGS is nothing to worry about, until you see the word Thunderbolt. Why? Because this variant carries the same exact gun as the SEP V3, the highest gun penetration in the game, plus an autoloader with the fastest reload. Give it a reactive armor and most Russian MBTs will need 3 hits to kill it. Up close, it can actually out-DPS almost all Russian MBTs, with the exception being the T90Ms and the T14, which will kill you in 2 shots due to their high hit penetrations. The M10 Booker, a medium tank that won't outgun solid MBTs, but with a fast reload of 5 to 6 seconds on its 105 gun, if you let this thing dance around you, you'll be in trouble. And don't forget, it can swap its gun for a 50mm gun, making it a solid hard counter to IVs like BMPs. Striker MGS, an AFV rocking a 105mm gun. Sure, it's not a tank, but being extremely fast on the road at 90 to 100 km, it is perfect for rushing flanks and getting cheeky side shots. It can also rock the AGL nade launcher, which is very effective in shocking and panicking tank crews fast, reducing their effectiveness and turning your steel beast into a confused tin can. The Sheridan tank. Ah yes, the famous aluminum coffin on tracks. Dies in 2 heat shells, no questions asked. However, it has a heat shell with a high penetration of 600, allowing it to two-shot most APCs and IFVs, and if given the chance to attack the sides or rear of an MBT, with low heat protection, it will do serious damage. This makes them derp cheap but dangerous counters to IFV spams, as long as the Sheridan itself doesn't explode first, which it will. Also, they do have ATGMs that can be fired on the move, take note. Next, the Russian tanks. They consist of the T-72. Similar to the M60 with 16 HP, don't expect this T-72B to win frontal 1v1s against proper MBTs, but being cheap allows them to work in swamps, pretty effective, watch out for those. The T-72B3 however, with its improved upgrades, can stand its ground against M1A1HCs and even M1A2 Abrams, with a good chance to win thanks to its autoloader, assuming if both tanks are engaged within the same gunshot range. Also, do take note all T-72s have ATGMs, allowing them to outrange any MBT's gun range. Terminators. Tanky like a tank with 4 Ataka ATGMs that can rip a fire on the move. Even if they run dry on missiles, those twin 30mm will true through armor sights, while the dual AGL grenade launchers can panic tank crews in seconds. T-80s. A bit more expensive than the T-72s, but with 16 HP, it will struggle in frontal engagements against solid MBTs. T-80BV is on paper worse than the T-72B1, until you upgrade it to the BVM, which allows it to stand its ground against HCs and even Abrams, and will win thanks to its autoloader if both tanks are in the same gun range. Like every Russian tank, both T-80 variants have access to ATGMs which will outrange most MBT gun range. And speed. The T-80s is one of the fastest MBTs in the game. 80 km on road and 60 off-road allows them to reposition quickly or make flanking opportunities. T-90s. Stock T-90 Op 92 is underwhelming. Low HP of 16, it will lose frontal fights against most solid MBTs alone, but when upgraded to the T-90A, they can stand their ground against decent tanks. With 17 HP and a good frontal protection, they are cost effective and dangerous when working in wolf packs. T-90M being the most modern variant, excellent gun penetration, and the second best frontal armor in the game, they will stand their ground against Abrams and SEP variants. Feeling the highest penetration heat shells, it will two-shot every APC and IFV in the entire game, and even some light tanks, with the exception being the Bradley A3 with bus tree upgrades. Don't forget, the T-90M guns has 1400 range which will let them outrange MBTs. Lastly, all T-90s have access to ATGMs, giving them a further reach. T-14s and T-15s. With the T-14 with the second best gun penetration in the game, carrying the same heat shells with the highest heat penetration and the best overall armor protection, only the SEP V3s is your real competition while other tanks is of no concern. Do watch out as the T-14 can upgrade its ATGM to a top attack, making them dangerous threats to tanks with no APS. T-15 having the same armor protection like its brother and comes in 2 variants, one packed with 4 Kodak M ATGMs. You already know how terrifying Kodak platforms are. Other comes with a 57mm autocannon, turning it into a knife fighter that will shred any MBTs on its sides and rear if it sneaks up close. And just like the T-80s, they are fast, reaching up to 80 km on the road, 60 off-road, and 40 km in reverse. Sprut. Don't underestimate this so-called light tank. The Sprut SDM upgrade carries the same firepower as a T-72B3 or a T-80 BVM, and with its cage armor, it will take 3 shots from every US tank to bring it down. Except the Sheridan. PT-76. Yes, we're talking about this shit bucket of a light tank. If you see the word PT-76 57, that 57, pay attention. That is one of the highest penetrating autocannons in the entire game. At close range, it can reach up to 240mm of penetration, which is enough to slice through APCs, IFVs, and even MBTs if it catches on their sides or rear. Basically, this shit bucket turns anything into a blender if ignored. Overall, the US tanks tends to have better AP penetrations like the Abrams with some of the best armored protections, while the Russian having access to more cost-efficient tanks, with most T-series tanks having access to high heat penetrations and ATGMs. With a deeper understanding, you might be asking yourself, hey, Isn't it better I just skip some upgrades? The Abram reactive armor packages slows me down, and the SEPs are superior to the Russian MBTs. On paper, yes, but reality isn't that simple. Let's put in another test with another example, the T90M versus the SEP V2 going head to head from the front. As we all know, the more HP and armor the tank has, the more resilient they are against other tanks. Looking at the stats, the better the V2 upgrades to the Tusk and the Tusk 2, against a T90M, you can see that the Russian tank has to keep getting closer if it wishes to maintain its 4-shot kill potential, and it will lose its ability to 3-shot the V2 at 55 meters from the front because of 1 additional HP. Same applies to the T90M if it upgrades its armor loadout. As we can see here, the V2 can 3-shot the T90M up to 197 meters, but if the T90M has upgraded to the OP-17, which gives it 1 more HP, the V2 will lose its ability to 3-shot up close. However, there are sweet spots for both tanks where they can put themselves at a certain range that will give them the advantage, which I like to call the golden range. If you see the new highlighted area, if up against a T90M OP-17 and using without or with the reactive armor upgrades on your V2, as long as you keep at this range, the T90M will always need 1 more additional shot to kill you, giving you an advantage assuming you don't miss your shots. Also, the more HP you have, that golden range opportunity increases, so do take note. Also, with your superior gun penetration, it gives it the edge at further ranges. Look at the highlights again for the 7-shot kill range, you will see the V2 is ahead while the T90M kill range struggles the more HP your V2 has. As for the T90M OP-17, they have their own golden range as well. Looking at the highlighted area, you will see those ranges are mostly within the same kill shot range. That's because Russian MBTs have one advantage, which is having an autoloader. Remember, tank crews will get stressed under fire, which will affect their reloading speed. Under shock or worse panic, the V2's reload speed plunges down even further, reducing its rate of fire, while the T90M's autoloader just keeps pumping shells at a steady pace. But the T90M isn't done yet. It has 2 more aces up its sleeves, and that's right, it has access to heat shells and ATGMs. Looking at the highlighted stats again, you will see at 1067 meters against a V2 with no Tusk, it is going to be at an advantage because at 1143 meter range, the T90M will change its AP to its heat shells, and worse, at 1246 meters, it's going to need 1 less shot to kill the V2. But if the V2 has either Tusk armor upgrades, the T90M would need to be at a range of 1246 meters or further to regain that advantage. Don't forget the T90M has access to ATGMs, which will give them an additional reach of 200 meter range, allowing them to take some pop shots at the V2, effectively lowering its HP first, causing crew stress and giving that T90M a further HP advantage when it comes into gun range. But all those advantages comes with a cost. The T90M only carries 6 heat shells and 3 ATGMs. Miss too many or waste them on lighter vehicles, and we will lose that long range advantage. Plus, if the V2 has APS or gets below 1400 meters, that ATGM advantage is pretty much nullified. Overall, think twice when choosing your tank's loadout and put them accordingly in the right range against certain tanks. This will be map dependent and which areas you are focusing, either long open areas or urban focused environments, and there's a chance you will face more than just one tank out there. Open areas is focused on long range engagement. Tanks with better gun penetrations, more frontal armor, HP, and APS to negate ATGMs will have the advantage. Urban areas is more focused on close engagements. Heat protection becomes more important to reduce infantry ATs or tanks with high heat ammunitions from instantly clapping your exposed sights. Plus, APS takes 6 seconds to rearm, so don't rely on it too much. And watch out for tanks with autocannons that can outflank around to hit your sights in rear that can easily panic the tank's crew. Remember, you can visually zoom in with your camera to see an enemy tank to check out its loadout. Look out for ERA bricks, extra armor platings, or APS modules. That quick glance instantly tells you if the enemy is rocking more HP, more kinetic protection, heat protection, and countermeasures against ATs and ATGMs, or giving you information on the enemy's weakness. Example, a T90M having no APS, making them extremely vulnerable to top attacks. Let me show you a gameplay example. Do take note it's at 120 ping, so things will get funky. Earlier inspections told me I'm against a fully upgraded SEM V3 that has come to challenge my T90M and Terminators. The V3 smoked to prevent it getting hit by my Terminator's ATGM, with my T90M taking a hit in turn. Then I had to quickly get off the road to avoid a cluster strike, which made my Terminator got hit and combat ineffective. And my T90 had its sight being slapped by an invisible Maverick, which also damaged my autoloader. What the hell? But during all those chaos, my T90M has been firing on that V3, which brought it down to 33% HP. But even still, the V3 still have the advantage and start reversing back as I try to use my infantry to distract one of his cavalry scouts. I made quite possibly a fatal error, charging forward with my T90M still panicked, but thanks to the tree line, the V3's line of sight was blocked. Immediately, I noticed my error and saw his aim time is about to be complete, first quickly smoking up to stop him from killing my T90M. But as the V3 starts turning to face my dying VDV dish, he's exposing his butt cheeks to my T90M, which I immediately push out of the smoke to take full advantage. As the V3 tries to run away with his back exposed to me, I finally introduce a heat shell onto his arse, first killing him and popping my last smoke at the last second to stop the tow team and took cover behind a building with supplies. So, what are the lessons we can learn from this? Positioning. V3's first mistake was overextending beyond the reaches of his tow and cav scouts. Neither are able to support him where he starts engaging my armored pair. The next mistake again was not pushing further back, instead he moved forward. Yes, it's a T90M which you can kill in one shot and its autoloader is damaged. Those are winning conditions for the SEP, but think again. There is an infantry AT nearby and you're at 33% HP. By being on the cross junction, you are exposing yourself to two crossfires, one from a tank and another from an AT infantry. Do you still have enough APS and smoke charges? Plus, with me smoking up later, prevent his aim time from being complete, denying him the kill shot. Last mistake, trying to retreat while exposing his rear. Remember, all tanks have access to heat shells and the T90M has the highest heat penetration. Yes, he could have smoked to block the line of sight and could possibly get away, but remember the previous mistake. Did he check if he has enough APS or spokes? Prioritizing targets. Knowing there are two cav scouts nearby, if both fire their javelins at my T90M, even with APS, one would get through and kill me. First, I rushing my infantry in to engage with one of the cav scouts, so if the other cav scout starts firing his jabs, my APS will negate it. V3 also made the same mistakes when engaging targets. Tanks will automatically aim their frontal armor at the biggest threat based on what it sees with the line of sight. It can't factor in what it can't see, and there are two threats out there. The right call was to keep reversing back and using the buildings as cover from the infantry AT with the frontal armor still facing the T90M. In summary, like what Shark had said before,
tanks need to be more aggressively microed.
Pay attention to your surroundings. Have recon in the front. Are there any AT infantry that can reach 600 meters from you, or ATGM units with great firing arcs that can engage you? Know your limitations. Play to your tank's strengths according to its loadout. Don't overstretch it. Abram players, stay from mid to long range. Don't let Russian MBTs flank or swamp you. Find your golden range, or keep your distance to play safe. If you cripple a Russian tank's autoloader, and you know there are no other threats nearby, press the attack. That is your win condition. T-Series players, use your ATGMs to outrange, or close in and fight within the same shot range to exploit your autoloader's advantage. Play aggressive. Wolfpack your cheaper tanks, overwhelm and sleep a heap shell into the enemy's sights or rear armor. Tanks with powerful autocannons, get closer to increase your gun's penetration and force the enemies to expose their sights. If you can exploit this, some tanks will point their frontal armor to you, exposing them to other tanks and allowing them to land devastating damage on their sights and rear. Bottom line, never ever play fair. This isn't a dueling club, it's a battlefield. Pick your fights, engage where the advantage is on your side, or back off to deny the enemy opportunities to killing you. Alright, part 3 is wrapped up. Next up, we'll be talking about long-range support units that can wreck you from across the map. Yup, artillery.